Coming up, sea launch.
Space launch.
And our main topic for today is spaceship, spaceship, spaceship. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now. And welcome to Tomorrow, episode 7.16 for Saturday, May 31st, 2014. My name is Benjamin Higginbotham. With me, as always, the beautiful, lovely, wonderful, and talented Carrie Ann Higginbotham will be your hosts for this episode. Now, before we get started, first off, the big news this week is Dragon Mark II. We're going to be talking about that in our main topic about 13 minutes from now. So it's such a huge news item, we gave it a whole section about that. So we're going to get into space news, but before then we wanted to thank all of the Spacevidcast oops, the patrons of tomorrow who make this episode happen. You know, I'm getting used to it.
Can they be the Spacevidcast
patrons of tomorrow? That's a really long one.
Yeah,
I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to it. These are the people who have contributed $10 or more to this specific episode to make this happen. We are a community-funded show, so a huge thank you to all the patrons of tomorrow who helped make this happen. Patreon.com/TM. All right, let's go ahead and get started with some space news. First up, for those, I love sea launch because...
you gotta love sea launch, man.
You gotta love sea launch. It's a slightly crazy idea, right? They take a rocket, they put it on a barge, they send it out to the equator, and they launch it from an old oil rig. Here, check it out. And everyone talking on top of everyone else. Now, that launch happened on May 26, 2014 at 21:10 coordinated time. That platform it launched from is known as the Odyssey launch platform. That's a converted North Sea drilling rig that they acquired in the 90s. I think that's actually pretty cool. That was carrying the Eutelsat 3B satellite. That's a just under 6,000 kilogram telecommunications satellite. It's going to broadcast television, internet, and data services to quote, and I quote, millions of households and business users.
I love it.
yeah. So a general telecom satellite. Now the advantage of doing a sea launch like that is you're as close, when you can get really close to the equator, you get more efficiency out of it because you're actually using the rotational speed of the Earth to help you along. So you can do a little bit more. So yeah, really cool, and it's good to see sea launch kind of back in action after a slew of issues. Yeah. We also had another launch. This was the launch of TMA-13M. This was a trio going up to the International Space Station on a Soyuz. Check it out.
Launch command has been issued. That second umbilical retracting. The boosters beginning to fire. We have preliminary booster ignition.
Any day now, Soyuz.
It gets there.
It's thinking about it.
And liftoff.
Jeez.
Liftoff of Reed Wiseman, Max Sarayev, and Alexander Gerst.
So mean,
the international crew on their way to the international.
It's a long hold down. I'm just saying, that's a really long hold down. All right, so that it's a night launch, so it looks spectacular in person and terrible on camera, unfortunately. That happened May 28th, 2014 at 19:57 coordinated time. This was one of their rapid approaches to the International Space Station. It docked, from launch to docking, was only 5 hours and 47 minutes later, which I'm sure the astronauts and cosmonauts really enjoy. This was sending the next trio up to the International Space Station. The Soyuz itself will then act as a lifeboat. And you want to read the names for me? Because I suck at names.
Commander Maxim Serov. I thought it was Rick Wiseman, but it said you wrote down Gregory Wiseman and Alexander Gerst.
There you go. That was our crew that went up to the International Space Station on May 28th.
And Wiseman's doing a lot of tweeting, which is a lot of fun.
Huzzah!
He's enjoying every last second.
Yeah, I'm really glad that they're starting to do that, right?
Yeah.
So it used to be this like really polished astronaut look, and they can't break the form.
It used to have to like go through Houston. Like if you were a NASA astronaut, it has to. You know, you sent it to Houston. Houston said, "This is no," but you know what I'm saying. Like, but when you're
right,
you know what I mean. And you know, I guess NASA would get involved and say, no, that's too entertaining. You have to dumb it down a little bit, and they don't seem to do that anymore. Anyway, that's just my own personal opinion. Don't mind me.
Next story is NASA's next Martian lander InSight. They've announced approval for funding for this. It's the interior exploration using seismic investigations, what am I trying to say there? Geodesy and heat transport InSight. There you go. Here's a quick, super fast animation. This was... Yeah, it's like 15 seconds, right? So there we are. Yay, we're entering into the Martian atmosphere. It looks a lot like Phoenix. In fact, for those of you who remember the Phoenix lander, it's actually based heavily on the Phoenix lander architecture. And it is a lander. It's not a rover. So it's going to land on Mars and it's going to stop there. It's going to land near the Martian equator. Because they land near the equator, it's going to actually last a lot. I love that logo. It's just
That's a really cool logo.
Cool, right? Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So it's going to land near the equator. Because it lands near the equator, they can actually spend a lot more time there.
Right.
Like 600 plus days. I have it somewhere in my notes. I don't remember how long it is. But it's going to be there 2 years of Martian surface time as opposed to the 5 months that Phoenix had. It's going to have 3 experiments. It's going to have SEIS, which is Seismic Experiment for Interior Structure. It's basically a seismometer that's going to scout for Mars quakes. Mars quakes. As opposed to earthquakes.
You can't call them earthquakes.
Can't call them earthquakes. They're Mars quakes. So we're looking for seismic activity on Mars. HP3, the heat flow and physical properties package. It's going to hammer 5 meters into the Martian surface, and then it's going to take temperature readings, and that's the furthest we've ever gone into the Martian surface. So that's experiment number 2. And experiment number 3 is RISE, or the Rotation in Interior Structure experiment, and it's going to calculate the wobble of the planet. You know, because Earth wobbles a little bit, so we're going to see if Mars wobbles a little bit. This is, whenever you say wobbles, you apparently need to do this. That's a thing that you have to do.
I'm just going to be over here.
I almost called it Phoenix accidentally. InSight is scheduled to launch in 2016. So, yay, huzzah, more Martian probes. Although I remember not that long ago, and maybe the chat room can correct me, NASA was saying, hey, yeah, we want to do more Martian probes and whatnot, but the satellites orbiting Mars that allow us to send back data from these landers, they kind of need to be replaced too. They're getting a little old.
A little
bit. A little aged up there, so we'll see how well that goes. I love
Zigger in our chat room says, wow, somebody really wanted to call it InSight, and it's the most convoluted backronym I've ever seen.
I am convinced that is how most NASA landers and spacecraft are named, is they are backronyms. They're like, we really want to call it Odyssey. How do we make it Odyssey?
Yeah.
Something like that. All right.
Oh, wow.
So actually, I did this show out of order. I should have done this in a much smarter way. NASA's latest Soyuz seat procurement. Jeez.
Wow.
You know what? I was up for like 3 days straight.
Why did you use the word procure? Couldn't you just said like NASA buys last seat on Soyuz? Like that would have been so much simpler.
Here's the story,
and it would have sounded cooler.
Here's the story. So NASA's made a $458 million deal with Roscosmos to send what we believe this is the last deal that they're going to have. This will send astronauts up through the fall of 2017, and that gives commercial crew time to actually get their vehicles in order and actually start launching. Now, this isn't the last order because of the whole Ukraine situation. This is, NASA doesn't believe they're going to need it beyond 2017 anymore. This was finalized in April, and basically they're just going to switch over to commercial crew from CST-100, Orion, well, Orion's not commercial crew, but they could, and Dragon, or whatever. We've also got Sierra Nevada's Dream Chaser, and I think there's one more.
There probably is.
Chat room, correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's one more. Anyhow, the end is for needing to pay 73 or whatever it is. It's $70.7 million per astronaut seat to Russia to get U.S. astronauts up to the International Space Station. There is an end in sight. There is the possibility for us to send it back up on U.S. vehicles again, and that's going to be awesome. Antares.
That's like NASA putting all of their bets onto, or all of the, betting on black kind of thing.
Yeah, bet on black. Well, no, I mean.
It is to a certain extent, though. They're like, we're pretty sure by 2017 somebody will be able to take us.
I don't think that's. I mean, it's going to be awesome. If we're still on the air in 2017 and we are or are not launching, we should refer back to this show. I think we will have commercial crew running on or before 2017. I don't see a reason why we wouldn't. Right. It seems like there are so many companies working towards this, and they're so far along in the process that barring a huge catastrophe, I I just don't see a reason why it wouldn't happen by somebody.
All right. Devil's advocate right here.
Antares has been delayed by at least 1 week. Their next mission to the International Space Station has been delayed to at least June 17th. It may be delayed longer. They're basically carving out that date saying, hey, maybe. What happened was on May 22nd, they have AJ-26 engines that they use on the first stage of their rocket, and they basically blew one up on the test stand.
Ouch.
And now they didn't blow the one up for this upcoming flight. They blew one up for the 2015 flight later, except that they want to understand what the heck happened here. So they've got a investigation crew going in. They're taking a peek at what's going on. They're going to see, is this an issue? Is this flight clear? And once that investigation's wrapped up and they clear Antares for launch for this next mission, that's when they'll set a true launch date for the next mission. Oh, hopefully it won't take too long. They did already test fire these engines, so you know, when you look at risk, it's fairly low risk, but you do really want to understand, why did that engine blow up?
Right. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah. XCOR has raised an additional $14.2 million in funding. For those who don't know, XCOR is working on the Lynx spaceplane. Here's an animation of what that is hopefully going to look like. It's basically a 2-seater spaceplane. It's going to fire its engines on the ground. It takes off vertically. It takes off horizontally and lands horizontally.
The other vertical.
The other vertical. It's a horizontal launcher lander. It goes up into space. You stay strapped in. It's kind of the right stuff kind of plane where you just throw it in the back of your seat. You get about 5 minutes in space. So cool. This $14.2 million is going to help them bring the Lynx to market. I still am not convinced that Virgin Galactic is going to beat XCOR to space. I feel like
this is going to be by a nose, man.
I think so. I mean, really, I feel like they're neck and neck here. Like they're, Virgin kind of runs into some issues, and XCOR is kind of taking calculated, easy steps forward. But who knows? Now, there are going to be very different experiences between Lynx and Virgin Galactic. Lynx, you're going to be strapped in. You're not going to be able to get up and float around the cockpit. Lynx, excuse me. You're still going to experience zero-G, but you're going to experience strapped down. Whereas Virgin Galactic, you can unbuckle. You can float around the cabin. I almost said cockpit. You can float around the cabin. I hope. Do not float around the cockpit of the Virgin Galactic.
Please don't.
Bump into a button. feather it out accidentally. It's going to be... I think it's really awesome that we live in a day and age where this is a reality, and they're going to drive the cost of getting into space down even further, and this is just a real thing that's going to happen within the next few years. I know we always say we're like 6 months out, but it will happen someday, right? There was a point in time when SpaceX was always 6 months away. Now they're launching...
Yeah, well, it was the joke in the industry, right? Like, oh, no, we're just about 6 months out. We're just about 6 months out. And now it really is starting to sound like, no, for realsies this time, guys. We're really actually about 6 months out, which is really exciting. I kind of feel bad because, like I said...
Well, we're not saying Lynx is 6 months out. We're saying that the general... suborbital space planes are hopefully 6 to 12 months out. Right.
No, and that's really exciting. Like I said, I feel a little bit bad inside the space industry when we try to get other people outside of the space industry interested in what's going on, and the sort of a little bit more approachable, real, quote unquote, real people can get into these sort of space planes, and but we're like, oh, it's only 6 months out to a year. It's only 6 months out to a year, but we've been saying that for like 3 years.
It's only $250,000.
Right, so we sound a little crazy.
All right, before we go into break, here's an interesting things coming up: the Low Density Supersonic Decelerator (LDSD). We've talked on the show before about how hard it is to get to Mars. The problem is that the Martian atmosphere is approximately 100 times thinner than Earth's atmosphere. So there's just enough atmosphere to make your life kind of hard. So it's going to heat up. You can't just deploy stuff. But not enough atmosphere to actually use it as a really good braking surface. So what do? Well, LDSD is one of the possible solutions. This is what it looks like. It's kind of a giant ring that goes around the outside heat shield, and it slowly inflates. And there you can see a time lapse of it kind of inflating around the heat shield. And what that will do, and here it is actually on a test sled. So we fire rockets, and we kind of inflate this thing. You can see it going around the heat shield on the outside. What we're doing is what JPL is doing is they're creating additional surface area around the whole thing. It's just going to loop at this point, Dada. So it creates additional surface area, additional mass for it to actually help stop the vehicle. Is creating additional drag on Mars as we're landing our vehicles, because you can't sky crane everything, you can't bubble everything, you need to slow these things down. And you can't deploy your parachutes, by the way, on Mars until you're approximately twice the speed of sound, a little under Mach 2. And when you enter in, you're going substantially faster than that. So you got to slow down at supersonic speeds.
Ironic, you have to slow down in order to slow down.
You have to slow down before you can actually really slow down, right? And this is what will help do that. And they're going to do additional testing in June where they're going to launch it on essentially a rocket launch up in the upper atmosphere of Earth to get into that really airy light part and see how well it works. See if they can slow down.
Nice.
So yeah, that's coming up in June. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, spaceship, spaceship, spaceship. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. Nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. 'Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving, the heat keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
Welcome back to Tomorrow. Before we get into the Dragon Mark II reveal, I wanted to give a huge thank you to the patrons of Tomorrow who helped make this segment go. This is everyone who's contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. You can get more information on how you can contribute to Tomorrow at patreon.com/TMRO. All right. So SpaceX this last Thursday, what was that, May 29th, I should have that etched into my brain at this point, had a reveal of the Dragon Mark II. There you go, right there. Curtain drops, May 29th. Dragon Mark II. We've cut down the presentation to about a 2-minute little segment. So here you go, main highlights.
That is how a 21st century spaceship should land. From a propulsion standpoint, the biggest single change for Dragon version 2 is the addition of the Super Draco engines. So this is really a super-powered version of the Draco engine, whereas the Draco engine produces about 100 pounds of thrust. Each of these engines produce 16,000 pounds of thrust. So hence the super. Sitting here in the pilot seat. And pull that down. So we've aimed for something with the Dragon version 2 for the interfaces and for the overall aesthetic of something that's very clean, very simple, so as the pilot, you were able to interact with the screens overhead, control the spacecraft, and then we've got all of the critical functions that are needed in an emergency situation as manual buttons. So that's what you see in this area here. Yep. So there you have it, Dragon version 2, capable of carrying up to 7 astronauts, propulsively landing almost anywhere in the world, and something that's designed, as I said, to be fully reusable. So you can fly this multiple times, allowing for potential dramatic reduction in the cost of access to space. Thank you.
And as Coco Fan in the chat room just mentioned, the inside is so sci-fi. We couldn't agree more. It actually, the whole vehicle looks a little bit sci-fi. It's like something you'd see out of a sci-fi movie.
Totally.
And actually, Alan Boyle took his iPhone and got some great cover. Check this out. I'm going to kind of voice over it a little bit here.
It's a little shaky, but it's good stuff.
It's very shaky. The other neat thing, I'll be quiet for just a moment here.
Up to the screens.
That's a spaceship noise.
That's not piped in.
That's not piped in. That's actually what it sounds like inside the spaceship.
Upside down.
That's so cool.
It is really cool. You can see the 7 seats and kind of their arrangement. So you got 4 up top, 3 underneath, and then when you look up,
Up to the ceiling.
It's a quick glance, but you can tell it's the International Space Station.
Yeah. There you go.
And then the old Dragon just kind of sitting.
Just hanging out. Dragon
big.
Dragon Mark 1 versus Dragon Mark 2. Yeah, and then the lights around the windows looked really cool. And actually, it was kind of hard to tell, but there's a halo of lights around the top as well.
Yeah, the blue and purple kind of worked well together.
You know, the internet's been talking about how clean of a design it is, and I couldn't agree more. And so we thought we'd take a quick look at some different spaceship designs throughout history. The first up from around the 1969 era is Apollo. So check this out. This is what it looked like when astronauts first went to the moon. This is the interior shot of Apollo, of their control surface, essentially. This is what it looked like. Now, this was super, super advanced technology. I mean,
at the time?
At the time,
Absolutely.
this was cutting edge, bleeding edge technology that got humans to the moon. The next big one that we kind of decided to look at was Space Shuttle. And this is the interior of a space shuttle. You can tell it's, now this is somewhere around, I don't remember what date this one was. It was like 87.
86 or 87, yeah.
Yeah, the space shuttle interior did change a bit based on, I mean, the shuttle was around for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
So it tweaked and got updated. But generally speaking, this is about what it looked like. So you saw that a lot of those controls have kind of been made smaller. Now we've got larger windows. You know, it's been kind of condensed a little bit, but it's still pretty large and complicated. And then we move to Orion. So Orion is due to fly in 2017. Now we've moved to a much simpler system. Right? We still got the tactile buttons kind of on the side, but now we've got those giant touch screens. It makes it much easier to see stuff. Just a much simpler approach. But I think SpaceX just really, really took this further, and they said, look, how simple and beautiful and elegant can we make this? And this is what it looks like inside. Is 4 touch screens and a center console. There was a moment where the internet just went absolutely crazy when we were watching the live event, and that was when Elon pulled the screens down.
Oh, that was so cool.
That was so cool.
That was so cool, and I was. I have no words apparently. It was unexpected as far as I was concerned, because I thought about that. I was like, okay, well, there's the seats. I get that part, but now what? You know, because it's not a dumb vehicle. Like there's got to be some maneuvering, there's got to be some control. And he said, well, I'm sitting in a pilot seat, and I was like, okay, cool. You can call any seat the pilot seat, I guess. And he's like, I'm just gonna pull this, and it locks in, and the SpaceX. I was like, yeah, that's so cool.
You told me to do this, and I completely forgot. I was gonna get the screenshot of the interior of Disney's Mission Space.
Oh yes,
because it's kind of that would have been awesome to compare it to a little bit. And actually, someone else mentioned. I don't have a screenshot of this. It reminds them of the interior of the sci-fi movie.
Flight of the Navigator.
Flight of the Navigator.
Go back, look at Flight of the Navigator on the inside, and the same sort of like etching that is inside of Dragon. There's a similar, although much more alien-looking, etching inside Flight of the Navigator. And of course, there's like the little kid like doing the whole navigating, but that was really cool. Yeah, that was just yeah, exactly. As Zigger says in the chat room, whatever seat Elon sits in is the pilot's seat. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, for sure. But
probably have like Elon stitched in the seat,
right?
Right.
The only thing I was actually a little bit sort of disappointed in, I suppose, is maybe the phrase I'm looking for, is the tan like leather interior seat kind of thing going on. I was like, everything's blue and gray and purple, and you know, the carbon fiber seats, and they look so cool because they're carbon fiber, and carbon fiber just looks cool. And then beige.
Yeah,
and I was like, really?
But carbon fiber isn't actually black. It's actually a deep kind of brown color. So putting that on there actually makes...
blue and the purple, although not like I should talk. I mean, our whole background's actually brown, and then we put purple lights on it and it looks purple.
No, we put blue lights on it and then it looks purple. Well, only on camera. In person, it looks green. It looks like a blue-green. Oh, here, actually, it looks like that color.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, no, I mean, and actually, I believe Elon even said in the Q&A after the fact, he was like a kid in a candy store. You could see it on his face.
Yeah.
Go back and watch. If you go to SpaceX's YouTube channel, you can watch the whole event. It's only 15 minutes long or so.
Yeah.
And it's just the brilliant thing about it is from the beginning to the end, he didn't waste any time. It was a this is what we're doing. This is why it's awesome. This is how it's happening. This is the future. 15 minutes of just
and then boom,
epic.
out.
Yeah, 15 minutes of epic rolled into a thing. Bam, there you go. And they did a Q&A with the press for another like 45 minutes or an hour. And in that Q&A, he did say that, you know, the silver interior that we saw, it'll probably be coated with another material inside of there.
Which is a little bit unfortunate because it looks so cool. But at the same time, I understand the necessity for that. So that was really cool. And those big, huge screens are about the same size as screens that are in Tesla. The Tesla cars are a little bit bigger, I think. But that's sort of where that design aesthetic came from. And you can clearly see that. It looks like a controller.
So we actually also had an opportunity to get into Dragon, and we can say that it is large. There is quite a bit of room in there. You know, I do need to point out, I forgot to do this before we started the segment, so let me point out that we are both employees of SpaceX, although this show is not sponsored by SpaceX. SpaceX doesn't endorse the show, nor are we spokespersons for SpaceX. So anything we're saying here is our own personal opinion, and not that of SpaceX at all. So we're purely going on the public information that was released at the event itself. They did let all press into it, so that footage you saw was actually from Alan Boyle, not from us. And so we actually had an opportunity to walk through the spacecraft also, and it's very roomy. I mean, if you're going up to, like, you look at the Soyuz, and it's like elbow to elbow, you're cramped like this, and you're like poking buttons like this with sticks. Right?
Granted, we weren't wearing spacesuits at the time when we were inside.
It doesn't matter. There was so much elbow room in between seats. You could kind of do this and not hit the person next to you. And there are 7 of them in there. And there's just plenty of room on both decks. It was quite incredible. Yeah. Now, I'm not sure going to Mars in that vehicle with 6 of my closest friends for nearly a year is quite what I would want to do. I would get cooped up within a
2
day.
minutes? Yeah, okay.
Well, me, I would get cooped up in 2 minutes. Yeah. I can't stay in one place like that. Yeah. But yeah, it's not that it's a fault of Dragon. It's just that I have yet to see a vehicle that could do that.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of spaceship, it's not just SpaceX. The CST-100 is going to do an unveiling very soon here as well. I think it's actually in June 9th or 19th, something like that. So we're at a point in time now where these spacecrafts, we've got the CST-100, we've got the Dream Chaser, which is kind of a smaller version of the space shuttle. Now we've got Dragon Mark II. All of these are kind of getting released and kind of finalized at the same time. Yeah. And it's really quite cool to live in an era where now not only do we have these suborbital planes that, you know, mere mortals can go on that have a lot of money right now, but that price will come down. But also the cost of accessing low Earth orbit is radically decreasing. And then beyond that, looking at where we can go next with Mars or something like Europa or the moon, whatever we want to do, all these possibilities start to open up. And they don't open up in this weird, it costs us so much money, we need political willpower, Apollo era kind of thing. It opens up in a business-friendly, competitive, like who can make this the best and lowest cost kind of era and sustainable. Right. So it becomes more than just flags and footprints. It becomes something that you can go out there and sustain. So I'm quite excited about what's going to happen for the next 10 years. I think we mentioned in 2010, in 2010 we said this is the tipping point. This year is the tipping point. And I think we were off by approximately 5 years. I think the real tipping point will be 2015. 2010 is when things started to happen, and the effect began because we were getting rid of the space shuttle. People were starting to look at commercial crew. Virgin Galactic was 6 months away from flying. I mean, all of these things were starting to happen. That was a joke, by the way. Thank you, controller, for laughing and chortling that no one else could hear. So we're 6 months, you know, all that fun jazz. But 2015 is when we're going to start to actually see these flights. We're going to start to see, it's going to start to solidify and become real. You know, maybe Virgin Galactic will fly. They're about 6 months out right now. XCOR might fly, but we also could get some of these abort tests for Dragon. We could start seeing CST-100 doing some tests. Maybe they won't fly in 2015, but it's the point where it becomes solid and real for everyone. Right. So I think 2015 might actually be the tipping point. There is a tipping point in here somewhere. I'm just not quite sure where. And that by tipping point, I mean that's the point where suddenly space is no longer something that is just a fun side thing for governments only. Now it's accessible to everyone. Right. Now it's a much bigger deal. We're getting back to the Apollo era. It's something that becomes permanent and sustainable. So, all right, there we go. Anything last comments on Dragon Mark II?
No. It was cool.
Cool.
It was very cool. I'm not gonna lie. I felt extremely privileged to be able to go in. That was a long day. It was a long event, but it was awesome. Every last second of it
Still
was.
have bags under my eyes.
Yeah, but it was worth it. It was really worth it. So it was very cool.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and when we come back, comments from our last show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
1, 0. Liftoff.
The fleet of space shuttles were doing amazing things in space.
We've got all your space geekery right here.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. Before we get into comments from our last show, I wanted to give a quick thank you to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who will help make this segment of Tomorrow happen. And these are the people who have contributed $1 or more. That's right, you can contribute just as little as $1 per episode. And if we do 4 episodes per month, that's about $4 or a price of a fairly expensive Starbucks drink. Just give up 1 Starbucks drink per month and you can actually help make a show about space and the cosmos happen. And these are people who have helped to make that happen. Patreon.com/TMRO. And once again, we are crowdfunded, so without your contributions, we can't. I feel like a PBS pledge whenever I say that, right? A little bit. I feel a little bit bad constantly bringing it up, but those are people who are making a difference on the show, and I like to think that the more people that are aware of this stuff, the more that they can help change policy to favor space,
right,
and get rid of some of the stupid stuff that's out there, and be positive about space and elicit positive change for humanity going to the stars. So I do actually think it's a big deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, not to sound too full of ourselves, but I do. So all right.
We're all in this together, though.
We are all in this together.
I think that's something to point out. Like, you and I are sort of the talking heads here. Well,
but it's everyone's show, right? I mean, we bring in your comments, and I think this show belongs to everyone, and the excitement of the space and cosmos belongs to everyone. And hopefully we get you guys excited about this, because we're excited about this. We think this is really cool stuff. All right, let's go ahead and get into some comments from our last show. Go ahead and start off. Oh, this came from our Reddit community, actually, at reddit.com/r/TMRO. So we'd like to favor our own Reddit community before anything else, so they get the top of the comments. So
nice.
Here you go.
Yeah, so this one comes from Halver also. It says, how about a full show, perhaps a special, on the different classes of launch vehicles, their operations of the various rockets, types of payload, as in, why do some payloads require an Atlas V rather than a Delta IV, and other comparisons between classes of launch vehicles and between individual models.
Okay, so that, interestingly enough, now that I was just harping on them, I feel a little bit guilty bringing up Patreon so much. We'd love to do more shows and more of what we call space pods, but it's a time and monetary commitment. Mm-hmm. And space pods actually take a lot of time. You'd be surprised at how much more time that little 2-minute show takes than this entire hour-long episode. So one of the Patreon goals is at, I think, $5,000 per episode. Which once we reach that and we start doing space pods, we'll break that into sections so you're not paying for space pods. And we'll figure that out at that time. But at that point, we actually would be able to start doing this full time, and we'll be able to do a lot more stuff. And I agree, actually, that would be a really good show idea. And actually, there are a lot more things that we want to do with, like, here's how this works, here's how that works, here's something you probably didn't know, just cool little short segments as opposed to these really long shows. I believe that's actually a really great balance, is having a long weekly live show that everyone can participate in. We've got this great, live chat room right here that we watch on, not that you can see that we watch on screen, and we're watching what you say in real time, your community, you're working with us in real time, and then having those little 2-minute segments of, hey, here's a thing that happened, hey, here's a thing maybe you didn't know, hey, here's something that's really cool, that you can then share with people, and rather than say, okay, well, I want to share this exciting moment with you, but it's 35 minutes into this episode, you can say, look at this exciting moment, boom, and get straight into it. So that's what we want to do. I agree, I think it'd be cool, but it'll take some time for us to get there.
So there you go. Awesome. Next one comes from Callisto8413. Funny, on the KSP forum, they were debating the U.S. linking up with China in the field of space, but there seems to be laws against giving China even pieces of information, and therefore the U.S. space program and the PRC space program can't get together.
Yeah, so KSP is the Kerbal Space Program, and PRC is the People's Republic of China. So basically, it's saying that the faux Kerbal Space Program, which, by the way, I had an idea. I'm going to sidetrack this comment for a moment. I thought this would have been hilarious, but I didn't have the huevos to make this happen. Which was, I thought it'd be hilarious if we bought little Kerbals, like little stuffed Kerbals, and stuck them in the chairs in the Dragon Mark II. So when he opened it up, there were little Kerbals sitting everywhere inside the vehicle. I thought that would have been amazingly awesome, but I didn't. Clearly I didn't do that.
Someone would have been fired.
Me, I would have been fired. That is why I did not do that.
Just saying.
That is actually correct. In fact, China is unable to really even work with us on the international space station.
Yeah, note that on the International Space Station, China, not really represented.
As it goes, as the rumor or talk or theory goes, basically China wanted to be part of the ISS, and we told them no, F off. And they're like, okay, well then we'll build our own. And we're like, you can't do that. And so they went and they built their own. They can do
China
that.
China said, yes, we can.
Then they were motivated to figure it out. And so then they figured it out. And that's how we got to where we're at today.
Good for them.
Good for
honestly.
them. And now they're like, now we want to go to the moon. And we're like, you can't do that. Never underestimate China. I don't think they move quite as fast as we do, and they do it in a slightly different way.
Sure.
But I think they can do it. I think they can do it. But you are correct.
Good for them.
You can't. We can't get together. It is illegal for us to do that. Politics.
Yay.
Getting in the way of peace.
Progress.
And progress.
Goodness. Okay. So Jeff and Tor says, as much as I want to see people on Mars, it can't be rushed. If the world is watching as the first people smash into the surface in a blaze of unscheduled lithobreaking, it could be devastating for the near future of human planetary exploration.
Yeah, we've reached into this moment where failure is never an option, and you can't have any problems or failures.
Which is extremely unfortunate.
Even in your development testing, right?
Yeah.
When you should be failing, right?
Right.
You should be, let's use this is not SpaceX policy. This is me talking only.
Sure.
Grasshopper is a test vehicle. It's done, right? They've moved to F9er.
Right.
So Grasshopper, the last thing they should have done is turn the knob to 11.
Yep.
And then to 12.
Yep.
And then to 13. Because
Just
you
to
learn.
see what happens.
You get valuable data from that.
Yeah.
You get valuable data from it crashing back down and making a crater.
Yep.
And amazing looking footage that I'd love to see.
Yeah.
But they didn't do it. They didn't do it. Because failure is no longer, not that this is a SpaceX policy, but failure is no longer
just in
tolerated by
general.
people. And I think that's really sad. We need to learn to fail and learn from those failures in order to succeed even better.
Yeah, if you fail on purpose, it's not really a fail, is it?
Correct. So the comment is correct. We have to be careful, because if we kill people on the way to Mars, imagine how far that could potentially set the industry back.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that some of the first astronauts, they were chosen from the test pilot pool, right? These are guys who have already dedicated their lives to this idea, and they're willing to take those risks. They were made of the quote-unquote the right stuff. Yeah, I don't want Elon smashing his brains into Mars, okay? That's sure. But there's plenty of people who are willing to take that risk. And if you're willing to take the risk and you know what those risks are, you're not just like, oh, well, maybe it could be kind of that. I'm sure they'll be totally safe enough. I don't see an issue with it. Like,
I don't
that's
either.
Probably a really controversial view, and I apologize for that. But
Don't
I
apologize
just,
for that.
maybe I shouldn't apologize. I don't know. I feel like if you are making an informed decision, you should be allowed to make that decision. Period.
Zigger had a great comment. He said, perfection is the opposite of progress.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
precisely.
All right, moving on.
Moving on. Fabio again comes back with, Russia will not do anything. It's good money that they are earning fairly. It helps developing their technology, and all this mess will only serve as a wake-up call for the U.S. to pay more attention to developing its own vehicles, keeping their technology sharp, and understanding the limitations imposed on the SLS architecture should be abandoned.
All right, so SLS is the Space Launch System. This comment's in reference to the Ukraine crisis and how Roscosmos has threatened to pull out RD-180 engine production, not sell the RD-180 engine to the U.S., which is used in the Atlas V rocket by United Launch Alliance, which is used for military payloads. It is used for, actually to be used potentially for the Dream Chaser, which is one of the ways that astronauts want to get up to the space station. The CST-100 was also going to use it, so it's a fairly heavily used vehicle, and if it has no engines, you can't go anywhere.
Right.
I don't necessarily disagree. Right now, it's all posturing, it looks like, so Russia kind of posturing, saying, hey, this is the thing we're not going to... You treat us like this, we'll treat you like that.
Sure, that's what it looks like, but
the
reality is still there.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they could totally do it. They could totally pull out. They could pull out and say, "Look, you can't have this." I'm not sure which is worth more to them. because
Yeah.
they it's 10 million per engine or something like that, and maybe they're like, look, we'll take the hit. And it's worth more in national pride, and it's worth more to kind of give the U.S. the middle finger than it is for the paycheck.
Yeah.
I mean, there's soft costs and hard costs involved there too. We'll see how that actually all plays out. I don't disagree that now maybe this will give the U.S. kind of a bit of a wake-up call and say, oh, hey, maybe we should bring manufacturing in-house. Although I'd also argue that who cares about borders, right? This is about getting humanity to space. Who cares about Russia versus China versus U.S.? Let's just get out there as a species,
Not to mention, wait.
I know that sounds a little utopian
so
and a little...
But it's like this little, not little, don't get me wrong. I apologize. I take the word little back. But there's this quibble over here, and because these two sides are against each other over this quibble, it's like, oh, well, then I just don't want to play with you at all.
A little bit, yeah.
Seriously? Because that didn't have... These two things are not necessarily related. I mean, they are, but they aren't. I don't know. Anyway, we've talked too much about that. So, Bill Housley says, on Mars, there will be many firsts to go around, including a great many we don't even know what it is yet. Whoever maintains the most boots on the ground will be the first of a lot of things.
Actually, this brings up another interesting comment, which I read... somewhere. It was a pro-robotics versus pro-humans, and it was basically saying, look, it costs 2% of what it takes to send humans to Mars, so it costs 98% of the more. I'm wording that poorly, but
right. Robots are cheaper than humans.
Robots are cheaper than humans, and you get just as much science out of robots.
Sure.
And that's wrong. You do not.
That's not entirely true. It's time versus money. That's what that argument is. So you can put robots on the ground, and they can do just as much as humans. Just, it takes them 3,000 years to do it, right? You put a human on Mars.
I would argue they cannot do just as much as humans. Even if you outfit them with everything, they just can't do as much as humans.
Well, I suppose, but if you make those two things completely equal, and you go, well, we're just going to put a robot on Mars, and it's going to do, these three things. It'll take them 2 to 5 years to do those three things.
It'll take a human a day.
Exactly. You put a human on Mars to do those exact three things, it'll do it in a day. So it's a time versus money thing at that point. But you're right. I think overall, robots are not as capable as humans in that. You see what I'm saying? But if you were to make those two things equal, it's time versus money debate at that
Actually,
point.
BZ Wing said in the chat room, a human could have done as much science as opportunity in a couple of weeks, and I wish I had it in front of me, but there was a opportunity just reached a new milestone as to how far it has traveled from its initial drop site, and it was piddly. I mean, it was as much as a human could travel in an afternoon.
Yeah.
It was tiny, and it took it years to do this, and so, robots are cheaper, and robots should be sent first. It's not one or the other. We need the robots. But we need the humans too, because we can do so much more with humans. Humans do cost more, but humans can do a lot more. So there's a reward with that, right? So yeah, it costs a lot more, but you're going to get a lot more out of it. All right, moving on.
So next comment comes from Sebastian, that Ben pointed out very clearly that he put this comment in the comment section so that I would have to say the entire name. Sebastian Bellinger Deschanez.
Oh, well played. Well played.
Thank you.
Let us know if she pronounced that right.
Or Sebastian. And Sebastian...
Let us know if that's pronounced correctly in the comments. I'd love to know if she got that right.
It's probably terrible, but I gave my best, so there you go. He says, and now click quote-unquote like before watching because I know all of the shows are great. Keep it up, guys. To the moon and beyond.
And beyond. Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
Thankfully, Sebastian had something nice to say, and you didn't just put it in the comment section, and he was like, and you guys suck so much. No. Signed, Sebastian Bechanel. What is it? Bellinger Deschanez.
And then I end on this next comment, which is hilarious, but we're not getting to it yet, Dennis. I did want to say thank you for liking. What's interesting is that without fail... almost right away, at least 2 people will dislike every episode we have. Mm-hmm. So we've pissed, at minimum, 2 people off. It's kind of funny. So you've made it when 2 people are pissed at every episode without ever watching it. All right.
At least. These guys suck. It doesn't matter what they say. One day we're going to find out who those people are, and we're just going to have an entire show dedicated to them and how amazing they are. And they're going to be like, I hate these people. Cool.
All right, our final comment, and you're going to laugh at this. Here you go.
Big breath from Stephen Grimsley. Can I just narrow this down to thoughts? Can't even read the screen on half
Oh,
that.
man.
All right, so he says.
I had to size the font down to fit it on the screen.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I'm curious as to how all the technology for the moon or a Mars colony would be brought into a single entity. Sure, there's a Mars Society and many others gunning for future space colonies, but will someone try to bring all of these interested parties together, along with the scientists and engineers that are making this marvelous technology like 3D printing or special bubble rovers, and not forgetting the farmers and nutrition guides to show which plants can survive in lower gravity and microgravity? Period. All of these things...
Was that one sentence?
That was one sentence. All of these things, as well as entities who claim to be providers, like how GVEC provides electricity, how will all these things that are just being made or on the drawing board or long forgotten relics that work better than anything come together? Thoughts? Basically, how are we going to do this, yo? That's what he means. I translated. You're welcome.
I'm not going to lie. I did put that in there just to mess with you this week. Now, for those of you who think that I'm going to do that every week, I am not.
Nope, I'll hurt him.
My policy is for comments is if you have an insightful, good comment, I'm going to put you in there. And you'll notice the week after week, Fabio was a good example this week.
Fabio.
He's here like every other
time.
week, every week. I mean, he has good
We don't know this dude, but we like what he says.
But he says good stuff.
Yeah.
So if you say good stuff, you'll get in the show. That's how that works. If you say hateful things or you start arguing with other people without respecting them as a person, you're not making it in the show. It's that simple. But
apparently, if you have the longest comment of the week, Ben might just throw it in there for kicks and giggles.
Apparently. Or if you have a really long, complicated name. The core of this comment was, really, how are we going to do this? But not just how are we going to do this, but how is one entity going to do this? You look at Apollo, and it was like NASA at the top, and then they forked out to like 9 million different companies to make this happen.
Right.
You know, you look at SpaceX, and sure, they've got a rocket and a spaceship, but spacesuit, environmentals, habitats, all these things that are necessary to live on Mars. And I don't know what the answer is. My thought is I don't know. Maybe SpaceX will vertically integrate all of it so that they are responsible for the entire shindig.
Sure.
Maybe they'll outsource some of it because they can. You know, they vertically integrate right now because the rocket industry is so messed up that a tank is $1 million, and SpaceX is like, that is a $5,000 tank you're charging me $1 million for. I'm exaggerating clearly, but they said we can do that. We can do that for $5,000, and they do it, and the company's like, yeah, good luck, have fun with that, and so SpaceX builds the tank for $5,000.
SpaceX is playing Name Your Tune, but with rocket parts.
Kind of, yeah. So. That's that maybe they'll continue that on with Martian stuff, maybe, or maybe that. The industry necessary to build that stuff is already robust enough. I look at the video industry because that's where I come from. The video industry has had competition for decades.
Yeah.
And because of that, equipment is inexpensive and very good and very reliable. And it costs more to develop your own than it does to just go and buy something off the shelf.
Right.
And SpaceX isn't necessarily, I think, vertically integrated. I'm using them as an example. Vertically integrated because they want to control everything, but because right now it costs less to build it themselves than to buy it off the shelf. If you reverse that, I think they'll just buy it off the shelf.
Yeah.
No idea. So that's one example. Maybe NASA will do it. Maybe it will be SpaceX that gets you there, but it's under the umbrella of NASA again.
Right.
Who knows? Maybe it will be a different entity. Maybe Mast Space Systems. Don't discount Dave. Dave's crazy enough to make stuff work. Maybe Mast Space Systems will be the first one there. He says he wants to scope out Elon's retirement home. Right? I mean, he seems pretty confident. Maybe he's got a trick in his back pocket where he'll be like, oh, I'm launching next week on now it'll probably be a Delta. I don't know.
No comment.
Probably not an Atlas V, I'm going to say that much. Or SLS or whatever it is. Who knows? So I think we're too early is my fundamental point. I don't think we can't get there reliably yet. We can't put humans on the surface yet. So you don't need to figure that other stuff out yet. Right. Because even if we haven't figured out, it's a lot like Bigelow's problem right now, right? They figured out the space station problem, but we can't get people there, so we got to sit on our hands and wait. Same problem with Mars, right? Why figure this stuff out and then sit on your hands and wait? Let's do it one step at a time, do it kind of in order, and figure out the problems as they come along. That make sense?
I think so.
Awesome. All right, that's our show for this week. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. For those of you watching live, After Dark is up next. For those of you who are patrons of tomorrow, we will be posting this After Dark into your Patreon account, so watch for that. Anyone who contributes $1 or more will have access to this After Dark. Now, we're not guaranteeing that for the future. I think we're going to change it to anyone who's a Patreon Plus member, which is $3 or more per episode. I think that's where we're going to kind of standardize if we choose to continue to release After Dark. I'm not sure yet. We're playing with it. So again, give me your comments. Let me know what you think. We've got a few people who liked it, but when I look at the views, it's like 5. Right, it's very, very low. So need to see some viewership there, need to see some real value there for us to continue doing that. All right, I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. We will not be here next week. It is our anniversary. We will be vacationing at Disney World, which is where we were married. Huzzah, it's going to be awesome, but we'll see you the week after that. See you.